Hello, everybody. I would like to welcome you to Raquel Ribeiro's lecture. She's talking about digital teaching, improving and fostering collaboration. Uh, I'll just want you guys to know. After this lecture ends, there will be the link for you to download your certificates in the video's description. All right. So please welcome Raquel Ribeiro.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Raquel Ribeiro. I'm speaking from São Paulo, and I'm following the chat here as you type. Thank you very, very much for being here. And I see there are people from different parts of our country because I'm following my phone. So hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. And this afternoon during my talk, I'm going to share with you practical ideas that I have been using while teaching during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we can relate, because everything I'm going to mention, show, and talk about has to do with this experience of navigating through such tough times. And the title of the webinar today, hold on please. It is Digital Teaching, Improving and Fostering Collaboration. You know, the context, if we travel back to March, all of us have this picture clear in mind. The moment the schools were closed. During my webinar, I want to invite you all for two very important things. First, to picture yourself during the activities and the suggestions, because it's so important. I know that the teachers here come from different fields of teaching. I teach in a language school, on average 20 students per class, but I know there are colleagues from state schools with more students in class. I know there are private teachers here, and maybe the different age ranges, like young learners. I also teach young learners and teenagers. The second thing, feel free to ask questions. I'll keep an eye in the chat, and it's so important that we interact and ask questions, share our experience, okay? Thank you so much for being here. To give you an overview, I will go through the pillars of teaching, considering this context, this very challenging context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, we have been shifting through different moments of the pandemic. So what was the initial school closure, and we didn't really know what to do and how to go about it, to emergency remote teaching. We were doing what was possible. Students were doing what was possible. And now 2021 in the very beginning, transitioning to what looks like a hybrid learning. And I use the word looks like because things can change overnight. If there's a lesson 2020 taught us, that's one of them. I'm going to share the difficulties we face and the key point of our talk, how to collaborate with our students. Of course, it is much easier if you teach like a very, very small group or just one student, but collaboration is a concept of uniting the interests and giving the others the chance to join. If we are not careful, we may be teaching one student and doing all the work, which means depriving our learners from the opportunity to interact and therefore learn. So keep this in mind. There is also wisdom and the things we have learned. So this is going to be one of the things I mentioned. And of course, the examples using tools. I will show some links here and videos, but don't worry because they will be available afterwards in the video description so you can access later on. Very well. So the three crucial pillars for teaching during the COVID-19 context, obviously technology. And I'm glad to see that what used to be the before COVID-19 context, that used to be a kind of a divide, the tech-savvy teachers and the teachers who would understand just a little bit and the teachers who would run away from technology and feel that they were not able to cope with. And this is something that has always made me very sad because we are all able to handle as much as possible according to the demands because we have this ability to learn. And this is one positive aspect to consider because we now know we are able to. There isn't really this divide. Maybe you are tech savvy, you know a little bit more, but all of us are able to navigate through the technology waters and probably much better than in the beginning. There's also empathy. Empathy with ourselves, with our colleagues, and our students. This is the ability to place yourself in another person's shoes and look at what can be the difficulties faced by the others. And it's so important because class success, learning success is very directly connected with empathy. Because when there's empathy, we kind of hold hands, even if virtually. We understand. We take a step forward to help, which means we don't give up. And the next thing to consider is creativity. Because let's face it, there are no ideal conditions to teach. And more often than not, we need to deal with internet problems, connectivity issues, issues regarding a student who, or more than one student, who don't have a proper equipment, just a very, very small mobile screen without a camera. Or sometimes the voice is not working. So many things. And this is particularly challenging for us because we teach language. It's a foreign language for communicative purposes. If you teach adults, they are studying English because they need to interact in meetings, give presentations, go through job interviews in a foreign language. If we are teaching teenagers, apart from having to face this in the future, they also want to use the language to have fun, to understand their favorite sitcoms, to communicate with colleagues, with possible friendships from other countries. And if you teach children, it's about learning and naturally acquiring the language. But the final goal for everybody, to be ourselves in a foreign language, to use it for our purposes and goals. I'm going to move on, and I'm following the chart here. Some common difficulties across our country, and it's so important to look at the whole of our country. I'm based in São Paulo, though I'm from Rio de Janeiro. But there are colleagues in smaller cities, farther, and in all the countries, in all the continents, and basically we face the same. These examples, they are so we can feel proud of ourselves and the creativity to reach out our students. Because when there is this empathy and creativity to reach out, it means we are making an effort not to give up. So there was the teacher who placed the homework and the activities in a plastic bag. There was, look, I saw myself without internet connection having to route the signal from my phone plan, so that I could at least explain what was going on. And many of us had to go through the same. When we consider all the places where the internet is so difficult, that they had to have classes via radio. And of course, the point of collaboration and social media. This touched me because it's a teenage student who felt proud of her teacher, who was feeling nervous. She just couldn't cope with presenting. And again, it leads us back to empathy. The teacher was very embarrassed with the fact she couldn't deal with the platform. She could not share her screen properly. And she started like crying. And she wanted to say, look, everything is okay. And she motivated the other students in the group to be supportive. When we are supportive and when we feel supportive, things flow. These are some of the difficulties. Each one of us know what you had to face. And of course, every time we face a difficulty, we learn a lesson. It's like, okay, if it ever happens again, we are ready. And we learn from all sources. And one of the sources are memes. I think memes can teach us lessons beyond being just funny. Some are funny, some are critical, and we can learn lessons from all of them. There's this one here I'm going to project first that is possibly from the moment of emergency remote teaching, the very, very beginning. And I'm going to read it in English. So a regular class, we would teach 2 pages from 25 to 27. Online class, okay, so you have to handle, it's like the teacher is assigning some sort of homework from page 25 to page 267. Take a photo, send to the teacher via email, and bring the statue of Christ the Redeemer, and of course, jump. It's just making fun that in the very beginning, there was this discrepancy. Okay, how much should we assign as homework? That was natural. We had doubt, so it was a lot easier to assign tasks, but we didn't really have this balance mostly. But of course, we learned a lot from this, the amount of homework to handle and what to do so it can be interesting and it can arouse the students' curiosity, because curiosity is powerful to trigger learning. Thank you so much. I'm following the chat here and I see many people joining. I'm going to share some links pretty soon, but they will be available in the description of the video later on. Then there is this one. It's a teenager again in Twitter. And basically he's talking about mental health. Yeah, he uses the expression, tá todo mundo caco, everybody's destroyed into pieces mentally speaking. But for the love of God, help your teacher. Yes, take part, join the classes. Yeah. He's also with a very complicated situation and mentally speaking, the mental health. Please help your teacher. And if we move along, there were other sorts of memes. There were memes to actually make us feel reassured. Because the point is, lots of teachers had mental health issues on top of everything, dealing with the family, the difficulties, the complete change of working scenario, long hours, not to mention the most important of all, the family health for people that they knew with all this horrible and very, very challenging and sad scenario around us. And there were teachers feeling like, okay, and we were all there. all of us. There was a moment you felt like, I can't take it any longer. It is too tough, because being in the middle of a battle is really tough. And I loved this one that says, reassess your expectations and reduce your workload. And take into consideration that the students are grieving, they are scared too. Teaching adults, we know that some lost their jobs or were very scared of losing their jobs and so many other things. So again, this takes us to empathy, empathy with ourselves, empathy with the others. And the last one in terms of memes before we actually go to the tools for collaboration. And the reason why I'm talking about the challenges we have overcome and using these memes to bring about issues faced throughout the year of 2020 is because collaboration does not exist without empathy. Collaboration is not about tools. It's not about using a lot of tools. The first thing is to connect. The first thing is to understand, it is to try to understand what the other is going through. And by the ways, there is no guarantee of anything, but being human is for sure the first requirement. And this one says, if you're teaching virtually, you don't need to learn how to use 20 online teaching tools. I've been blogging for some years, and I blog about technology. Let me show you my blog, Informed Teachers, on Instagram. I also have a blog, and I also blog for the Cambridge World of Better Learning blog. And I blog about technology. So this is what I talk about. So let's say I'm the very first person to defend the use of mobile and to defend the use of technology. But it's not only about that. So I share things that I do in class. But look, it's not about the number of tools that we use. It's about how we use those tools in terms of the purpose and in terms of how much this is going to involve students actively in the process. Having said that, let's proceed with the presentation. Here, the person who posted on Twitter said, your students need you to keep it simple, familiar, clear, and organized. Simple so that we feel we can. Familiar and clear, because if we are emotionally anxious, it's not going to happen. We're going to be blocked, emotionally speaking. Organized in the sense that if this collaboration is registered, it can be followed after class. So we are talking, what I'm going to share with you here has to do with synchronous online classes. But we need to consider that studying is also asynchronous for two reasons: to reinforce the content taught, and also for the absentees or people who had a very, very difficult connection and they need to revise things. So organizing in a way that the class does not vanish into thin air. And organizing collaboration, it means we do this together. It's not like the teacher sends a list of things. Okay, so just calling your attention for this point. One of the key things to consider is the internet connection. That's why it is the first pillar I'm here. I'm going to type in the chat my profile because it was requested. I'm following as much as I can, right? And the whole point here is if there is no connection for online synchronous teaching, then there is no teaching. And we know that there is a huge digital divide in our country and all over the world. Of course, some countries suffer more than others. And we are very aware of the digital divide in our very own country. And what you see here is a photograph of a student. I just took a photo of a very short part of the screen where one helped the other follow the class via Zoom using WhatsApp. So there was no ways that this student here could follow the class because it wouldn't connect, it would fall, and she wouldn't take part in class. And then the other one said, "Look, teacher, I think I have an idea. What if I call her via WhatsApp?" And then she video called the colleague via WhatsApp, and it worked. And I asked her, "Can you hear me?" She said, "Yes, teacher, perfectly." And this colleague here said, "Okay, I will hold you so you can follow the class." So she was holding the colleague literally throughout the class. And every time I remember that, I say, whoa, you know, like you're going to take part because you're my colleague, you're going to learn. This is empathy in a very high level. The next thing I'd like to show you are now exactly the tools to move along with digital collaboration. Collaboration is when students take part. The first tool I'm going to show you is Google Classroom, but it could be very well a Google Documents, for example. I just wouldn't recommend WhatsApp because it is not possible to organize things in WhatsApp, and that's the only reason why I do not recommend that. If you think of Google Classroom or even a Google Docs, it is possible to organize the flow of information, and the best part is to collaborate. So we teachers step a little bit back and let them take the stage. I'm going to show you a video, and this is a silent video, okay? So there is no sound. I will be, let me just project this here. I'm going to show you the video, and just understand that it's okay. There is no sound in this video because I'm going to narrate the process here. Yeah? So what I'm going to show you is a sequence of screen share of the usage of Google Classroom during my classes. The video is going to be available to see in details. Like, for example, here in the first part, we were talking about the importance of social background. So I shared videos, but look at what is most important here. The most important part is the way students express their views. So they talked about it and exchanged ideas in the breakout room, and they come back to a social network and exchange ideas as well. The other one is a basic level group. Actually, it's a teenager group. With this group in particular, I used Google Assistant, the artificial intelligence of Google Assistant, and they had to check the weather in different cities and write. The next one about activities, let me just go back here. Yeah, this one, activities that you would like to try, a group of teenagers, and they replied here what they would like to try. It is so important to give our learners a voice, and this voice can be registered so that they can check it later, so that they can refer to this later. I wrote an article in details about it. Let me show you. It's easy to find. It's about Google Classroom in ELT. This was shared in the Digital Teacher, which is a blog by Cambridge. And here I talk about the user experience, the contents, and I give suggestions of what activities to do. So this will be in the description of the video later on. Still talking about Google Classroom, which could be a Google Docs, for example. Let me show you here in the sequence. Yeah, okay. This is a screenshot of another lesson, and there were questions here, which, by the way, I dictated first, and I used Google Classroom just to check. Okay, so it's important. We don't have to provide everything. There must be a challenge. Attachments are important, but the most important thing is the student's voice. Because the collaboration happens, everybody at the same time, giving their opinions. Are they going to make mistakes? Yes, most probably. So how is that going to work? You cannot edit an answer in Google Classroom, true. But you can point out to the student, maybe it's a spelling or a verb in the past or something else. And what they do, they delete the previous answer and create a new one. The student is working, not you. They are supposed to be busy typing, helping each other. And obviously, the class is not based on typing, but this typing could be the pre-conversational activity while or maybe post. And if a student is absent, if somebody is not there, is going to get to understand what happened, and better yet, add their voices, okay? Because you read the question, say, okay, I know how to answer that. It's important that you tell your group, look, if you miss a class and you see your students, your colleagues answered, then of course, join, answer too. Sometimes you say, but Raquel, I don't use Google Classroom, or I'm not very familiar with these sharing processes. I would recommend using social media, and the highlight for teachers at the moment is Instagram. Instagram is popular with both adults, teenagers, and people are entertained by social media. People, exchange ideas. And of course, this is used when you don't want to learn anything, just to have fun. But this can be used to learn. For us, it's a great resource because there's a picture or a photo and the possibility of the comments. But you could very well have this in Facebook too, if you feel like. During the pandemic and using social media, is a lot connected with getting to understand what is going on around us. And during the context of COVID-19 teaching, I used my account because that's the very purpose why I, Raquel, have an Instagram account, is so that I can collaborate with my teacher colleagues and my students. And by the way, if you use Instagram as a teacher, you should have an open account. That's the best thing to do, so that it's easy for your students to reach out. Let me show you. This was a moment where we had to stay home, and there was the campaign in Instagram, stay home. I think everyone is very, very familiar with that moment. Let me show you this particular post, because the purpose was to have students research and share their opinions too. So this is the post, open for takeaway orders only, and all the difficulties. So I asked a question here, and they shared their points of view based in two things. I suggested some background reading for vocabulary, and also to see what it looks like in other parts of the world. And they talked to each other, and they expressed their opinions. So every activity that they type, they're also, of course, supposed to interact with each other in conversation. That's the whole point. Something else, I see here in the chat mentioning Google Forms. I totally agree, because you can have a very, very short, straight to the point forms and engage your learners. That's amazing. Thank you very much for mentioning. Let me show you another post related to this shift to virtual interviews. So in a moment where everybody's concerned about losing their jobs, about finding a job opportunity. So you've got here the post, and the most important things. They are expressing their opinions based on two things. Remember, they are acquiring the foreign language, so there's recommended reading so that they can find out what is happening in other parts of the world. And there is also their opinions and what they exchanged ideas in the breakout rooms. And this is the most amazing part of collaboration, when you see that the student is focusing in producing something and using that to speak. There are other possibilities for collaboration too, and one of the most recent possibilities that teachers everywhere feel very curious about is the possibility of using Google Jamboard. Basically speaking, Jamboard is a digital post-it possibility. Obviously, we have to understand the mechanics to deal with the possible resources there. What I'm showing you, it's a very simple Jamboard shared with the groups, where they had to come up. I left the words, and they had to come up with those meanings. So there are many ways of working with Jamboard. Basically, one thing that I think is very effective is to assign a digital post-it to each group and make sure they know their color. So you color code the groups is much more efficient. And then they type whatever it is the purpose of the activity. Keep in mind that it's super important to share the file properly so that the students can edit. Another thing, if they are using their mobiles, they need to have the app. In a very difficult scenario where one or another student is not able to say, okay, I just can't open the Jamboard. Remember, collaboration is this. Maybe you have a group of 5 students and only one has the access to edit Jamboard. The others help via chat, the others help by communicating. But there is something else you can do. You can save the production, the final production, in a PDF so that a person who has a very limited device can see what happened afterwards. Okay, and I say afterwards because, of course, a PDF is a file that cannot be altered as a default. It's possible to create Jamboards, like for the whole group, like this suggestion here, or maybe you create just one and multiply it by a number of groups. So it all depends on your purpose. Let me show you another thing about Jamboard. Let me share this with you. So the first idea of Jamboard is that it is a collaborative board. Yeah. What I personally like about Jamboard, apart obviously from the collaboration, yes, the real-time collaboration, which I think is precious, is what I consider is a digital post-it. Post-its are used to brainstorm ideas. They are used in design thinking dynamics. They are used so that we can follow a more organic process with the information and to organize learning and challenges as well. I like to call it the digital post-it. Very well. These are some possibilities of collaboration. Maybe you ask me, Raquel, but what if I teach only one student or a very small group? It's fine, you can make use of that. What if I teach a huge group of students? Amazing. Maybe in the sense of Jamboard, you could have to create like more files, or maybe not. It all depends. We can always color code and ask students for ideas. They shouldn't be forever bound into a platform. Also very important to remember. Collaboration with virtual reality. So some of you who know me are aware of my work with virtual reality. It's been a while. So basically what I used to do was to take a cardboard box, and this is where the students place the phone so they could take a virtual trip. Then there came the pandemic, and look, how can we share things? It's a new world. It's a new normal. So it's not possible anymore. And I was thinking, okay, but virtual reality is out there. How can we cope with this? And then I was thinking, okay, the concept of virtual reality is to be in a place for a while with the help of technology to have this experience. Then I had an idea. I decided to encourage my learners to visit places using just their mobile phone, because of course they wouldn't have a cardboard at home. And I gave them a task. But then I decided to go beyond the task, because everything needs to have a reason. So I said, okay, the first activity would be, okay, you talk to each other and then you exchange ideas. That would be amazing too. But I wanted something else. So I challenged the learners to kind of produce a very, very small footage of the visit, guiding the others. I'm going to show you a video and then I'll make some comments afterwards. You know, we are far away, but we can collaborate and help each other. And why not add, we can dare and go beyond the established limits. So it's not like, okay, I can't do that anymore. What I think is like, okay, maybe I don't see it, but I will find a way around it. That's what I would like to share with you. So I'm going to play just a little bit of this video, and now there's going to be sound. And you are going to listen just a little bit of my voice and a little bit of the student's voice too. I may have to fast forward, but it will be available afterwards.
Was art, and I thought it would be an amazing opportunity to have students visit museums from different parts of the world. Before the pandemic, I used to have this experience with Google Cardboard Box, but of course it's not possible now. But there are so many opportunities. So let me show what we did in the students' production.
I took an online tour of the Renaissance part of the National Gallery in the UK, and I really enjoyed the paintings. So I showed things very easy, initially because I could see that the museum structure is rather easy, like the terrific materials that they had and how they what they are. Perhaps those choosing, I chose it because I would like to see where most famous Latin American artists made her pieces. It is also her house, the one choosing.
Well organized the thing is, and how royal everything looks.
To see some kind of art, but what caught my attention were the architecture of the place, like the ceiling.
It's contemporary and modern sculpture. What called my technologically advancing and multifaceted.
Born house in UK to see the Dorsbar's room. What caught my attention is the fact that Queen.
We can use that to teach English as a foreign language for the different levels.
Very well. I apologize if the audio was not really great to hear, but this will be available. And what happened here, I challenged them not only to visit, but to narrate the tour from their perspective in a very short, around 30 seconds long mini video using the stories in Instagram or any other video. And I was like, oh my God, are they doing that? They were far away at home. I gave them a window of around 10, 12 minutes. And then they shared those videos with me, either by tagging me or by sending it to me. And this freedom is important. How is it that the student feels more comfortable? And then I was so impressed. I said, wow, can I put this together and write about it? And they were really excited. So it's like when we feel proud, it shows that we trust their potential. It's so amazing to trust the potential of our learners and to feel proud of what they do. Let me show, I wrote a post in details talking about how this worked with the young learners and involving the parents and the teenagers and the adults, of course. It's here in the World of Better Learning blog. And something else which I've been doing in terms of teaching, some of the blogs are audio blogs because of accessibility and inclusion. And then I tell the story here of everything and share the videos and ideas. So going beyond the virtual trip, and the video is right here, and all the other activities I tested. So, and of course, it's an audio blog, for inclusion and accessibility. It's really dear. This is really, really important to me in many levels. I'm moving towards the end of the webinar, and just let me find. Thank you. So adjustments were made. So it's not about we can't. It's about find a way around things. And if we can't, ask your students, you're going to be surprised of how much they help us out. And there comes more technology. Yeah, it's pencil and paper. I talk about technology, but the whole point of using any app, any sort of platform, is to reach out so learning happens. But learning is a very cognitive and important process. We are very aware of that as teachers. And just the clicking and clicking and clicking is not enough. So I invite you to also consider the power of pencil and paper for note-taking. And then you say, okay, Raquel, right, how can we go about it? One of my favorite techniques is using dictations, because when you dictate the questions for conversation, rather than just giving the questions ready and sharing your screen, you are challenging the students to focus and pay attention. How much can they understand? But obviously, I'm going to use like a Google Classroom, for instance, or the Google Docs to share the correction. That's where technology comes. Or better yet, what I have been doing lately, instead of me sharing the right answers, they type the questions so we can all correct collaboratively. And even though it's pencil and paper, yeah, there is a positive challenge and can be linked with technology. I mentioned some tools. I always think and strongly believe that it's not about the tools, and for the love of God, it's not about using all these tools in one class. It's about making use of key tools steadily. Because if you use Jamboard in one class and then never again, or if you open an account in Google Classroom and then you use Google Classroom only to share files, sharing files, so there is no purpose here. The creativity comes into having this special way to look at things and say, okay, how is this that the collaboration can connect us, even being apart, in a productive way, if they have to study later, if they miss a class. And I have some words to consider. These words to keep in mind. I have learned, I teach from Monday to Saturday, at night, in the morning, lunchtime. So it's my work as a teacher. And we sympathize as a community because we know how it has been like. So empathy is so important with each other. We don't have a cake recipe. And you know what? It's amazing that we don't, because we are humans. We are not robots. We're not perfect. Understand the context. Reach out to the students and families. I personally, when talking about reaching out to families, I use emails because I think it's my personal view that WhatsApp is really overwhelming and not organized at all. And unfortunately, the barriers in terms of working hours and when to ask a question, when to reply, are a bit blurred. So what I establish with the parents of my students is email. have a parallel tool besides the video conferencing one. So I faced episodes of no connection, or maybe the platform was not working at all. And my parallel tool was Google Classroom. So the students knew I was there, we were there. I open a message every class. So if they come late, they know what is going on. Definitely encourage peer support. We don't have all the answers. They help us, and when there is empathy, there is genuine interest, and emotionally, it's very conducive for learning. Share your findings as a teacher. Some people shared, like tagged me, something here and something there. Communicate, support. If you go to my Instagram posts, there are comments, add your voice, please. Or maybe if you read one of the blogs I have written throughout this year, add your experience in the comments. I've learned so much from all the peers throughout these years as a blogger. And live one day at a time. I am so thankful to have you all here following for the questions and the chats, and the links will be available pretty soon in the video description. Together as a community, we can support each other with ideas, we can support each other with empathy, and we can develop, we can learn. So the context, there's a huge challenge, but we will prevail. Check videos, share things, and let's encourage each other. Thank you so much for being here. I like the clapping for people who are hearing impairing people. And I think it's so important that we cater for as much as possible to all ways in which we can include the others. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Hi, Raquel. Thanks a lot for joining us today. It was awesome. And thanks a lot, everybody who has joined us. Now we're going to present the lecture, Thriving with Technology. Will Chaos Finally Get the Best Out of Us? With Fernando Moraes from Pearson. Right now, it's starting at 4 p.m. Brazilian time. And if you want to download your certificates, the link is already available here on the video description. It is valid only for 7 days, so download it fast. And thanks again, everybody. We're finishing the broadcast. Thank you.